I still remember the night I first set foot inside what locals ominously called the Mannequin house, a sprawling, decaying mansion on the outskirts of a forgotten Midwestern town, shrouded in an oppressive silence and steeped in decades of whispered legends that spoke of curses and restless souls, and how an inexplicable force seemed to pull me there, as if destiny itself had conspired to have me confront a horror that defied explanation. I had been chasing authentic, spine-chilling content for my YouTube channel when I discovered an old, leather-bound journal tucked away in a dusty antique store. Its brittle pages described a house filled with lifeless figures that moved on their own when no one was watching, and despite every rational warning echoing in my mind, I found myself drawn to explore its rotting halls alone, armed only with a flickering flashlight and a camera to document every unnerving detail. Pushing open the creaking front door, a sudden, icy chill, not born of the autumn air, but of something far more sinister, rushed over me, and I was immediately confronted by the sight of countless mannequins arranged in grotesque tableaus. Some stood in silent ranks along narrow corridors. Others sat at dust-covered dining tables in a dining room frozen in time, while a few loomed in what had once been a grand ballroom, their blank, accusatory faces fixed on me as though they possessed a silent, malevolent consciousness eager to awaken. With each step deeper into the house, the atmosphere grew heavier, the peeling wallpaper whispering secrets of a long-lost past, and every gust of stale air carried with it the faint sound of distant, sorrowful murmurs. In one cramped study, dimly lit by a weak, sputtering lamp, I discovered a mannequin clad in an antique suit, positioned at a desk cluttered with yellowed letters and faded photographs. In that moment, as I strained my eyes, I witnessed its head tilt ever so slightly in acknowledgement of my presence, a subtle movement that sent a surge of terror and disbelief coursing through my veins and made my heart pound like a warning drum. Frantically, I raised my camera to capture this impossible motion, yet as the flash burst, it seemed to ignite a chain reaction. The other mannequins began to shift imperceptibly at first, a gentle rustling of synthetic limbs and the soft creak of joints that should have remained forever inert. Soon, it felt as though the very air around me thickened with a presence, as if I were being encircled by unseen eyes. Outside, storm clouds gathered and a bitter wind howled, while inside, the intermittent flicker of my flashlight revealed fleeting, spectral shapes in the periphery, shadows that moved with deliberate intent, as if orchestrating a macabre dance among the lifeless forms whose eyes, though hollow, glinted with an inexplicable malice. My trembling resolve pushed me further into the mansion's heart, through corridor after corridor that led to ever more disturbing displays. A nursery filled with antique dolls whose unseeing eyes seemed to track my every move. A parlor arranged like a silent seance, where mannequins appeared to be locked in a ghostly conversation, and a narrow, spiraling stairwell from which emanated a rhythmic tapping, echoing as though from below the very foundations of the house. Ascending those creaking stairs, I could feel the temperature plummet, my breath turning visible as the silence was punctuated by the distant sound of mechanical humming interlaced with mournful moans, a spectral chorus that hinted at ancient sorrows and unfinished business. At the top, I stepped into a long, dim corridor lined with cracked mirrors. Each reflection showed not only my own terrified face, but also the disconcerting silhouettes of mannequins lurking just behind me, their presence growing more insistent with every faltering step until the horrifying realization struck me. This house was no ordinary relic, but a living, breathing entity that thrived on fear, feeding on the souls of those who dared disturb its eternal slumber. Then, in one heart-stopping moment, the oppressive silence shattered into chaos, a cacophonous crash of shattering glass, splintering wood, and a chorus of inhuman voices echoing from every corner of the mansion, as the mannequins sprang to life in frantic, almost desperate motions, their limbs contorting in unnatural ways, and their blank faces twisting into expressions that seemed to plead for liberation or retribution. Frozen in abject terror, I could only watch as one towering mannequin, its face a grotesque mask of pain and fury, extended a cold, stiff hand and pointed directly at me, its motion both eerie and commanding, as if it were declaring that I, too, was now a part of a curse older than time. The room spun, and the relentless storm outside intensified, pounding on the fragile windows as I bolted for the exit, My footsteps echoed down labyrinthine corridors, while the once-still figures followed in a maddening, synchronized cadence, their low, disembodied whispers merging into a dirge that promised eternal torment. I burst out into the stormy night, drenched by rain and shaking uncontrollably. Yet the terror clung to me long after I left the mansion behind. Every shadow in the downpour seemed to hide watchful eyes. Every gust of wind carried faint, disembodied laughter, and I could feel the weight of unseen gazes following me through the darkness. Over the ensuing weeks, the memory of that night invaded every facet of my life. My dreams turned into nightmarish sequences of endless corridors and accusing, blank stares, while even mundane moments became fraught with the inexplicable sensation of being watched by something that should not be alive. I found myself obsessively reviewing my footage, each frame a stark reminder of that cursed encounter, and I began to document every unsettling experience in a series of video logs for my channel, hoping that my story would serve both as a warning and as a desperate cry for understanding. I reached out to local historians and paranormal experts, all of whom recounted similar legends about the house, a place once owned by a reclusive collector whose obsession with preserving beauty had twisted into a dark compulsion to capture life in lifeless forms, a practice that, it was rumored, had doomed his soul and those of his victims to wander the halls as silent observers. One elderly man, with eyes clouded by time and sorrow, told me of a ritual performed by the collector, a desperate attempt to infuse his creations with a spark of life, a spark that instead became a curse, binding the mannequins to the mansion and condemning them to an existence between the living and the dead. His voice trembled as he recounted how neighbors had heard strange music and seen flickering lights late into the night, as if the house itself were performing an eternal requiem for lost souls. The deeper I delved into these accounts, the more I became convinced that the Mannequin house was not merely a repository of eerie artifacts, but a dark portal to an existence where the boundaries between animate and inanimate had long since blurred. My investigations led me back to the mansion on several more nights, each visit more harrowing than the last, as I attempted to capture definitive proof of its supernatural nature. On one occasion, I ventured into a forgotten wing of the house, where I discovered a hidden room filled with countless porcelain dolls arranged in a circle around an old, cracked mirror. In the mirror, my reflection was joined by dozens of ghostly figures, apparitions of the mannequins that seemed to reach out from the glass in silent entreaty, their hollow eyes shimmering with a mix of despair and longing. As I watched in horrified fascination, one of the figures slowly raised its hand and beckoned me closer, its movements both hypnotic and tragic, and I felt an overwhelming urge to obey, as if the mirror itself were calling me to share in its eternal captivity. I recoiled just in time, my heart pounding as I fled the room, the sound of my own frantic breaths mingling with the echo of the figure's silent pleas. Every subsequent visit left me more deeply marked by the house, as if its malignant presence were etching itself into my very soul, forever linking me to its cursed legacy. I tried to rationalize the inexplicable events as tricks of the light or overactive imagination, but the mounting evidence, the shifting figures captured on camera, the inexplicable voices recorded in the dead of night, and the pervasive sense of dread that clung to me like a second skin, left no doubt that I had witnessed something truly unworldly. Now, even as I document my experiences on my channel in a desperate bid to understand and expose the unholy truth of the Mannequin house, I remain haunted by the lingering question: are the souls trapped within those lifeless forms still yearning for release or revenge, and have they somehow imprinted their despair onto my life, ensuring that I, too, am forever bound to their sorrowful fate? Each time I hear a creak in the dark, or catch a glimpse of a shadow moving where it should not, I feel the cold, accusing stare of those porcelain eyes, and I cannot help but wonder if, somewhere in the depths of that cursed mansion, the mannequins continue their silent vigil, waiting for the next soul foolish enough to disturb their eternal slumber. And so, with every shudder and every sleepless night, I leave you with this chilling inquiry. Have you ever felt that overwhelming sense of being watched by something that should not be alive, something that lingers in the forgotten corners of your home, waiting patiently to pull you into its dark, inescapable embrace?